Get on the train before it leaves the station. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down.
Hello folks, how you doing? Okay, so those of you who watched my video earlier where I talked about the contest to draw a logo for the channel, and where I also introduced that I was going to be doing a countdown to Christmas. So I said I was going to be starting tomorrow. Well, I'm going to go back on that. I'm going to start tonight because I wanted to add two other things. And the first 3 nights here are going to be two items per night, and then following that it'll be 1 item per night. So tonight we're going to go over 2 things that I just had to add that I had overlooked, in my immediate list. So, all right, those things are going to be the Detective Feely CD, okay, which is huge, and what all happened with that. And that is a potential Brady violation, we'll call it, since it's still being argued, and it's in the Court of Appeals, obviously. And then the second thing is the hood latch DNA. Those are the 2 things we're going to talk about tonight. And it's like I said, what I want to talk about with this countdown is not just everything that we look at in this case, but in particular, I am going after the things that show impropriety by the state, but not just at the law enforcement level, but that this is on multiple levels. And that's the main point of this countdown to Christmas. So, okay, starting with the CD. You guys have seen Travis and I cover this before. We've talked about the CD. We've gone through, the motions and the filings, and we've looked all through that. And it is damn odd and really very obvious what they were doing. The way that they handed it over, the information back in 2006. Okay, number 1 was very odd. They handed over basically a bunch of DVDs that weren't looked through at all. Just handed over these DVDs literally a month before trial, or 2 months before trial begins. Less than a month before Denny's decided, which is what these DVDs would have been important for. And the prosecution knew that. And you know how they knew that? Because they had a CD that was created by a Detective Veely at Grand Chute Police Department, because he's a computer forensic guy. And he created a CD, and he pulled all of the disturbing images and all of the disturbing stuff off of those drives, and he put it all into a CD that could easily be popped into anybody's computer and read with a PDF reader. Okay? But they didn't hand that over. They waited until 2 months before trial, when there's a lot going on, lots getting decided and argued, to hand over 7 DVDs, which is the entire content of a hard drive. The Dassey computer hard drive, which they were calling Brendan's computer. I guess they were trying to do that preemptively, in case Dean and Jerry were able to overcome this, huge handicap they were putting on Dean and Jerry to be able to find this information, right? But maybe just in case they did, they were calling it Brendan's computer. Just wondering if that was a preemptive, tactic, just in case Dean and Jerry ended up finding out anyway. So you have just all this misdirection, obvious misdirection, and this is the district attorneys. One of them is the Assistant Attorney General of the state of Wisconsin, Tom Fallon. And this is what you have going on. Detective Veely did his analysis back in April of 06. Okay? And they held on to that all the way until December 13th of 06. Then suddenly they handed over the 7 DVDs, which required a special program to be able to open and to be able to view the files on it, right? So that required a special, but they didn't hand over the CD that had Detective Veely's analysis right on it. Now, another reason why this is a huge point to me, not only do I feel that this is a Brady violation, because number one, I feel like the way they handed over the DVDs was slimy, but then you have this CD that, like I said, would have been easily readable, pop into any computer with a PDF reader, and it would have been viewable. And it was held onto in Tom Fassbender's personal custody. What? Investigators are just holding evidence in their personal custody? I mean, what? Like, is it in their garage? Like, their kids can come out and play with it? Or something? I mean, I don't know. See, that's just a disturbing thing for me. That Tom Fassbender is some kind of storage facility for evidence or something. I don't know. See, I've never gotten a sufficient explanation of that, really, in my opinion. So, yeah. Anyways, so you have that. It's held in his personal custody for 12 years. Then, folks, look at the time the state, in fact, Fallon, the Assistant Attorney General again, chooses to hand that CD over to Kathleen Zellner. I mean, Zellner came onto the case long, about 3 months after Making a Murderer came out. The first one. She was involved then. They waited until after Judge Sukowitz had denied the motion for post-conviction relief, and then they gave her the CD. Why wouldn't they have handed that over before? When they know that the way that the law is set up and the way that the courts are set up, that they want everything to be brought under one umbrella, one motion, right? They want it all to come together at once, and they would wait until after it's denied to hand that over. You see what I mean? I mean, for me there, it shows a clear calculating, of what they were doing. Waiting until basically it looked like they were up S Creek, and then said, "Oh, here's this." I mean, yeah. So there's so much wrong with the CD, and the way it was handled, the way everything about that, and then the whole what was on the DASI computer. Because why is the CD important? Why is the computer hard drive important? Because it basically shows that during times when only Bobby Dassey was home, there was some very, very disturbing pornographic imagery and videos and things that were being viewed. And Bobby Dassey was the prosecution's star witness, who was their guy placing Teresa at the scene. You see? So they don't want Dean and Jerry to have what's on that computer. And they don't want to hand over that CD, obviously, because it makes it real easy for Dean and Jerry to see what's on that computer. Because they know it will impeach their witness, one of their biggest witnesses, right? Because Bobby is the one that places Teresa there. His testimony to the jury. And that's why they have a clear motivation to play all the games and hide and seek, as it were, with all this stuff. I mean, it's obvious, and it's insanely obvious that that's what was going on, and that's just not proper. And this is just one instance, but if you have to resort to these methods to get a conviction, maybe you're up the wrong tree. I don't know, but anyways. They never thought about that, apparently, here, obviously, because, they went forward as, we know they did. So, yeah, the CD is a Brady violation. Would it have been important? Would it have made a difference if it was handed over? Yeah, I think it would have. I think that if that CD was handed over, and to get even further down into it, if the state wants to argue that the defense should have done their own analysis of it or whatever, well, I think it's clearly established that the state spent way more than the defense ever could. Over 1 million, and a lot, way over 1 million, but that's how much. And Stephen Avery and Dean and Jerry had a limited budget. So this basically means that the state, knowing how much money they were spending on all this, thought that Stephen and Dean and Jerry, on the tiny amount that they had, were going to be able to somehow get experts in to analyze the computer. I mean, if you're spending that much money, I mean, that's part of the justice system, isn't it? To try to create some kind of equilibrium. But I mean, is there an equilibrium? If the state can go out and spend over $1 million, and then they can't even share the work product of their computer forensic investigator, and that's okay. That's just fine. I mean, how many people can raise that kind of defense? That can raise that kind of money to get those kinds of experts? And I don't know. Anyway, look, it's, to me, the huge thing here is, if the state hadn't spent extravagantly, I wouldn't be bringing this up. But the state did spend extravagantly, and then to want to hold back what their investigation turned up because they realized it didn't favor their case is an obvious Brady violation. I mean, it's pretty obvious. And a lot of people are making the argument of, well, they had the DVDs. Yeah, less than a month before Denny was due. And it required a special program. And you're talking about navigating an entire computer hard drive. Okay? You don't know, you see, that's what Detective Veely had already done. And it's just, yeah. Holding that back shows that they knew their case was on shaky ground. That they feared losing Bobby Dassey that much. They knew that their case was on shaky ground. So that brings us now to the hood latch DNA. I mean, I have a video about that, which I will post below as well, that goes through a lot of basically the specifics on the hood latch, DNA and everything. And the whole point is that, and you guys may have heard me, I was over on Mr. Capaldi's channel the other night, and we were talking with Andrew Whitehead, and Andrew has actually cultivated a conversation with a DNA, person, somebody who's in that field, and he's been asking questions, and it turns out that the normal amount of DNA that, generally speaking, the normal amount of DNA that you would get from a touch DNA that leaves a fingerprint, and basically if it leaves a fingerprint, then that means you're really shedding. That means that is like the optimum time for you to be shedding DNA, if it's enough to leave a fingerprint, right? So if it's touch DNA and it's enough to leave a fingerprint, you can expect to find 0.6 nanograms. Okay? 0.6. That's still a quarter of what they found on the hood latch. Now, what Andrew did say was that in further conversation with this DNA person, that person said that the amount that was on the swab, basically the 1.9 nanograms, that they, in their experience, that is consistent with what you generally get from swabbing somebody's groin. It's in that neighborhood, basically, was this person's opinion. So that's interesting stuff, but the point is that somehow Stephen left 1.9 nanograms. Now, Andrew's DNA person says that a touch DNA, you can leave around 0.6. If there's a fingerprint, you can maybe find 0.6 nanograms, right? We know that Zellner and her experts did an experiment opening the hood of the RAV4 she had bought 15 different times. And out of all 15 of those times, only 4 of them were actually left enough DNA for it to be measured, and the other 11 weren't. There wasn't enough DNA there to be measured. And I found out that the limits of the test, you had to leave at least 0.005 nanograms in order for the test to be able to detect the DNA. So it had to be more than that, more than 0.005. But what they were finding was 0.06, 0.07, 0.04 is what they were the results they were getting from the 4 that actually did leave some DNA on the hood latch. So the hood latch DNA is very strange, and as anybody who's watched Making a Murderer 2 at this point, you've seen Zellner's expert explain that what seems to have most likely happened here, because of this really, a lot. It's an exceeding amount of DNA on the hood latch, and he basically says what would explain this, more easily, is that somebody had a groin swab or something, a swab of Stephen's DNA, and they switched it with an evidence swab, and so the swab, the control swab of whatever you want to call it, of Stephen Avery's DNA, or the collection of his DNA, that swab suddenly becomes the hood latch swab, right? So that's what they're saying happened, and when you look at the amounts and you look at everything, and like I said, after hearing what Andrew has been finding out from the guy he's talking to, is that the amounts are not consistent with touch DNA. That's basically what it is. 1.9 nanograms is just not consistent with touch DNA. And like I said, if Zellner ever gets her hand on that RAV4, she's going to go testing the hood prop, the battery cables they claim he, disconnected the battery. She's going to be, swabbing all that. Okay? Remember what she says. If you're guilty, you don't want to hire me, because I'm going to find out. She's going to do every test, and if you're lying to her, she's going to find out. So that's what's going to happen if she ever gets the RAV4. Why is the state so scared? If Stephen actually did this and his DNA is going to be all over those parts like they said, then why wouldn't they want to let her prove it? Why are they holding back? So it's the hood latch DNA is just ridiculous in the extreme. It's, you have the affidavit from Stephen where he says he actually watched Wiegert. He talks about how they decided they weren't supposed to collect them, the groin swabs or whatever. And then he talks about watching Wiegert, who went towards the receptacle to throw them away, but he recalls that Wiegert didn't do that, and he tucked them away and kept them. So, I mean, you have Stephen's affidavit of that. Well, like I said, you don't just have to believe Stephen's word for it. You can look at what happened. The amount is just astronomical. It's not, that's not what you don't leave 1.9 nanograms as touch DNA. That's, and just like I said, Andrew's expert, said roughly the rule of thumb would be about 0.6. If a fingerprint, if there was enough to leave a fingerprint, then you could expect about 0.6. And Stephen somehow left 1.9. Right. So these are some of the problems, obviously, with this. It's something that Zellner's pointing out, and it's something that this is all part of the appeal process, and it's all getting pointed out, and the more that this stuff gets pointed out, the weaker and weaker and weaker the state's case, the narrative of it, and everything becomes. And I mean, it's got to be about ready to collapse at this point, because it's just been completely Swiss cheesed with holes at this point. So that's the first 2 items, folks, here for the countdown to Christmas. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We will, like I said, be covering topics here to show impropriety by agents of the state, and not just at the law enforcement level, right? So that's what we're looking to do here tonight. That's what we're looking to do here with the countdown here going into Christmas. So hope you guys are going to enjoy this little series of videos as we head into the holiday here. If you guys haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.